effects of sharing a language, and the way that fans can take ownership of something, if that's the case.
I mean, what I would, since Jack is definitely the wordsmith of the duo here, I definitely want to say though, I believe that creating, again, kind of going back to that community aspect of it, and that we've created these, so oftentimes just off the cuff, most of the time off the cuff, these words and phrases, and people latch on to them, and it becomes, like you said, like a secret handshake. It's like, I know something these people don't know, but these people do. And again, creates such an important bond. And then also bond with us, with the listeners. And a lot of times I feel like that comes out of, at least for me, I can't speak for Jack, but for me, it comes out of doing my best to be as vulnerable as I can, and just being open and letting shit fly. And for me, I know that resonates when I listen to different things, and I know people are just like doing what it is and being themselves, and what they say can latch on to me. And I hold that dear. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
no, it makes perfect sense, JP. Let me follow up. I want to dig into that a little bit. You talk about being vulnerable and how that makes it easier. Is that part of your acting training? Is that where that comes from? That ability to tap into, most of us walk around every day as ourselves.
Yeah.
So you're you and whatever. Yeah. But when you talk about being vulnerable, you're talking about taking an extra step there. You're talking about as if you're talking to your wife or your child, I assume.
Yeah, and also just being willing to feel something openly that might be uncomfortable for other people. I can only give this as an example. I was in a production of the musical The Full Monty. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie.
Of course.
The Full Monty. And in the musical, much like the movie, we would strip naked in front of a live audience. And usually there would be, the lights go off a certain way and stuff like that. But there were, and I'm a hefty guy, and I played the role of Dave. And, there was a shared vulnerability with the 6 guys who were all up there, just the 6 of us, literally standing in there in a fucking G-string and nothing, about to reveal to the world everything. And it happens, and I can't tell you how many guys, these are older guys who are, they were heavy guys, and they came up to me afterwards and they were like, man, like I was taken aback, because I'm just like, I'm being a goofball. I'm being funny, but this thing resonated, the fact that I was comfortable enough showing my body in front of people, and hundreds of strangers every night, and they would come up to me and share a story or something like that when I'd see people back in the lobby. And to me, that became sort of I don't want to say a mission. A mission sounds way too fucking noble, but I'll use it in a way, like the fact that, I'm able to make these guys feel comfortable and maybe get out of their shell or something like that. And so to me, that's a very important thing, is sharing personal stories that may be overly embarrassing, like talking about how I was in a show where I stripped naked in front of hundreds of people.
And the shared language gets people out of their shell as well.
Right.
I think that's more than anything what it is. I mean, we live in a world now where people just make references at each other. They don't talk to each other. Small talk is dead. People don't know how to talk about the weather anymore. I mean, if they did, by the time the pandemic's over, they'll have no idea because the only time they talk to someone is by appointment, unless it's in their own household.
I got the weather on my phone. Why the fuck would you talk
yeah, how boring is this? Right? So what do we have? We can only learn about each other, it seems to me, in this current context by sharing a passion in common and bouncing references to that passion off of each other to see what sticks, to see what resonates, to see what gets a chuckle or what doesn't. And so I think that's why common language is so important, because it helps people who otherwise aren't equipped to meet new people or to, be comfortable meeting new people, to give them a vocabulary to work with, a slate to work with, comfort that they can actually say what's on their mind based on their life's, passions and history and interests, and that the person on the other side of the conversation is going to receive it and appreciate it. Like that's why common language is important, I think, now more than ever, is because, Jesus, I'm not sure we know how to talk to each other without it.
Let me ask you this, and this gets a little bit more personal, but you're 7 years on, the Patreon is providing, a significant amount of money every year, right? Mm-hmm. Do you ever talk to each other as friends and just go, how is it that if Jack says electrify me, do you or or fuck it, right?
Fuck it, boss.
Exactly. Do you ever talk to each other about how wild it is that you have people out in the wild?
Oh my God.
Doing this to each other.
I can't.
This thing that the two of you, this is yours. But now, no, it's theirs.
No, it's theirs. I don't think we talked about it in a while, but I remember kind of one of the first, within the first year of the show, we were having just a real conversation, just the two of us. Might have been at a get together, I don't know. But I remember us saying, "Can you believe?" Like, we could not believe, because when we got more comfortable with the show and doing it, obviously those old jokes just kind of, and those old inside jokes from the two of us just kept creeping themselves back in, and then people started repeating it and emailing us and tweeting it, and it was like, that was so weird for the longest time, hearing people recite and material essentially that we had just used to do to each other. That sounded weird, but used to kind of bounce off each other when we were in college, when we first were friends. It was surreal. It was surreal that all this stuff was coming back. Totally. In this way, and people, and to that end, now people are buying T-shirts of drawings that I made in 1994. Like, it's bizarre and it's wacky, but it's amazing.
It's amazing. I mean, for the uninitiated, for people who don't know, when JP was a kid, he would draw these posters for the big Royal Rumble pay-per-view of the different wrestlers. And, it'd be the wrestler's logo, and it would say, like, this guy's going to win the Rumble or whatever it might be. And he drew a bunch of them. And during the pandemic, he got back to his parents' house and he found them and put them up on Patreon. And the response was incredible. People thought it was so cool to see these sort of artifacts from the hosts.
And then we've been talking about, I've talked about it many, many times.
Right. He's referenced it many times. Right. So the appetite has been whetted. And so now that they're on T-shirts, there's a chance that 2-3 years down the road, who knows, we'll be at a wrestling convention or whatever the fuck, or a wrestling event, and he'll come face to face with somebody wearing on their chest the drawing he made at 9 years old in his kitchen. That is ridiculous.
Yes.
That communication channels are such now that phenomenon can be created without really any gatekeeper. We didn't have to convince an executive that was worth putting on a show that's then distributed. And while I think we've lost more than we've gained by removing gatekeepers, that is one of the magic pieces of it, is that you can make something out of what you thought were just disposable parts of your life and of your brain space, disposable thoughts that you had. No, capture those, because there's nothing more electrifying, to borrow that phrase, than finding out that somebody else out there might grab onto that thought that you had that you thought was uniquely yours, or uniquely yours and a friend's, and run with it and feel it and give it back to you. At one point along the way, and people that might start researching the show due to this podcast will find this and are going to need an explanation. We decided to say we're all up in that ass.
Oh boy, here we go. We were going to get there, but please.
I mean, this one took me by surprise because it really wasn't one that dates back to the, formative days of our friendship and the give and take.
I think it was one that maybe we used every now and again as kind of this is the greatest thing I don't know what, but like, oh yeah, this is really intense in that up in your ass or something like that, like
right.
Yeah.
It started to be, because first of all, the show is incredibly long, as you've referenced several times, and size matters, girth matters, veininess matters, and I think we've proven that. You have to be long, you have to be erect, and you have to be ready to not pull out until you're finished.
That's right, and you need to be ready to, there's that great GIF of the train. Plowing through the
in an animation,
the small, animated,
like
it's an animated GIF of a cave it's a tunnel that's too small for the giant train. It just fucking plows through. That's the Labs fan.
So we started saying this during the show, because we're like a earworm, we're growing inside you. Once you let us into your hearts and into your mind, and you actually embrace all of what the show is, and you put down your guard, and you swallow your pride, and you stop pretending that the show isn't addictive, then we've got you. Then we're in that ass. And, it's like a hip hop phrase. It's not like we came up with it, but to use it about a podcast that makes you think about when you used to play with toys as a kid, it's stark contrast. But we started saying that just to kind of put a fine.
We said like once or twice. I think back in the day,
to put a fine point on what effect we felt the show was having, and putting a phrase to it. And then we started getting emails back of people using and we could. I was taken aback by how many metaphors people came up with for their assholes. Like, thank you for manipulating my chocolate starfish.
There was one guy. I won't drop his name here, but he emails a little more sporadically now, but for a while he was a regular emailer, and my God, he is so funny because he always found some other completely wretched description of a butthole, like as if there aren't enough wretched descriptions to begin with. But like, from brown star to, I think, a poop shoot, he called it one time.
Of course. That's just the beginning. Turd cutter.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the point. Like, we're not actually, well, sometimes maybe, picturing someone getting pounded in the ass, but it's just it's still somehow so fitting to use that as a symbol of what the show does to people, that it endures, and people like
it forces you to bend over and present.
I mean, look, someone the other day tweeted, a great listener of the show, a friend of the show, like, why am I still thinking about this bit you said about Waylon Mercy walking 4 hours down the freeway to go get ham?
Go get ham at the grocery store.
Right.
Yeah.
And we replied simply, because we own that ass.
That's right.
That's why. Thank you.
It's interesting. Here's my hypothesis on this, and it just goes right back to everything used to be better and being men of a certain age. What was funnier? What was more all encompassing when you were 10 than a poop joke?
Of course.
Yeah, there might be a little bit of that in it. You're right.
It's so true.
Right.
I mean, we talk a lot about the shame and that sort of thing and sharing it, and this seems appropriate to talk about now. And I'll bring this back around, I promise. But I was in the car the other day and I was listening to the show, and I had gone back a little ways to catch up. Another thing we'll talk about is shelf life. But JP starts talking about Robert Parrish in a locker room shooting rope.
Oh my God.
Well, I gotta say, it was him. He said it first, and if I brought it up, it was definitely bringing it back, because that is one thing that I'll never forget when he first said that. when Jack first talked about, and to be clear, he's talking about Robert Parrish ejaculating in shooting rope.
Right.
I was I thought about it for the entire week. Like every time it came into my mind, I just started keeling over laughing at the